It springs from the icy heights of the Himalayan peaks and traverses 2,500 kilometers through northern and eastern India's plains before it meets the sea. The Ganga River has sustained and nourished hundreds of millions of people's lives and livelihoods through the centuries. But today, the river is facing a slow death.
Now we know the quantum of sewage, raw sewage which is flowing into the river, and as on present date, 350 million liters per day is being disposed of into the river.
तो 45 करोड़ लोगों का जीवन बचाना मुश्किल हो जाएगा। 45 करोड़ लोगों का जीवन दांव पर लगा हुआ है गंगा बेसिन में।
The government has sounded the alarm bells, warned the polluters, and launched a massive Clean Ganga project on a war footing. But will the new mega scheme make a difference when several others have failed in the past? The Gangotri Glacier in the icy Himalayas, the fountainhead of the holy river Ganga, has been the bedrock of the Indian civilization since time immemorial. Hundreds of millions of people have made the river a part of their life's journey from birth to death. For Hindus, the river is a goddess. Some call her Ma Ganga or Mother Ganga, who washes away sins and takes one to heaven after death. They believe if you are cremated on the riverbanks, you are liberated from the cycle of birth and death. Cities have flourished on its banks, embellishing rituals and traditions through the ages. But as the river flows into the plains, it loses much of its speed and purity. The holy Ganga River today is facing a grave threat. Over the decades, unplanned urban and industrial growth has led to the river system's abuse, turning it into a toxic stream at several points during its journey to the sea.
Ganga is dying. I think if I can use the word like it is already unconscious, and it is in the medical terminology it has reached almost at the stage of the ventilators, and if we make our best efforts we can at least put off the ventilators and permit it flowing, but with some pollution.
The pollution is mainly caused by the hundreds of millions of liters of sewage and chemical effluents flowing into the city's river. According to recent reports, about 4.8 billion liters of sewage from 118 towns and cities flow into the Ganga every day. The functioning capacity of sewage treatment plants is only 1 billion liters per day. To add to the river's woes, tons of garbage and organic waste are dumped into it daily. As the river comes down from the mountains, the first major industrial town it meets is Kanpur, in the nation's most populous state, Uttar Pradesh. This is where the issue of industrial pollution becomes acute. The garrison town was known as Kanpur during the British colonial times, more than 100 years ago. It made leather belts, boots and saddles for the army. The city today has the largest concentration of tanneries that process animal hides into finished leather. While doing so, the tanneries release high levels of toxic chemicals into the Ganga, posing a threat to all living species.
Roughly 400 tanneries are there. And the pollution due to tanneries has been a very chronic thing. Almost 2-3 decades this has been, right from Ganga cleaning work started. This is Kanpur has become a kind of symbol of pollution. Not only tanneries, the sewage, because Kanpur is the largest city, something like 35 lakhs, 3.5 million plus population is there. Water becomes less and so much of population. So sewage and industrial pollution both have been a major cause of concern.
In a drastic move a couple of years ago, the BJP state government shut down around 240 tanneries to keep the river clean. Many of them have now been allowed to reopen if they operate at only 50% of installed capacity and meet the environmental norms. The city's leather industry provides direct and indirect employment to about 1 million people in Kanpur and the adjoining districts. The crackdown on tanneries has had a devastating impact on the lives of thousands of workers who depend on the industry. 38-year-old Amit Kumar had a steady job as a line supervisor in a tannery. After the unit was shut down, the owners ran it secretly at night. But Kumar could not join the night shift since the factory was far away from where he lived.
तो वहाँ कच्चा चमड़े का काम होता था, तो वहाँ पर क्रोम का पानी वगैरह होता था, तो वो पानी निकलता था, तो बाहर सरकार की तरफ से नोटिस आई हुई थी, तो फिर उसको बैन कर दिया गया कि पानी निकालिए, ना निकालिए तो फिर ये हो जाएगा। तो हमारे यहाँ जितने भी आदमी काम कर रहे थे उनको सबको निकाल दिया गया, छटनी कर दी गई। तो छटनी करने के बाद अब ये होता था कि अपना वो चुपचाप चलाते थे, तो रात की शिफ्ट में अपना जिसको बुलाना होता था वो बुला लेते थे, बाकी हम लोग जा नहीं पाते थे क्योंकि दूर थी बंथर में, और मैं रहने वाला श्याम नगर में हूँ, और फिर मैं वहाँ कैसे जाऊँ। और इसी तरीके से हर तरफ हो रहा है, जितनी भी टेंडिया जो भी कच्चे चमड़े में काम हो रहा है, वहाँ सारे तरफ नोटिस आ गई है, हर आदमी परेशान है। अब आदमी क्या करे इसमें।
This is the law of the land. You start an industry and you are not getting a license to pollute the natural resources. So if they do it, they will have to get closed, and that's what happened. That also brought a sense of responsibility in them, because it's not that they are getting permanently closed. If they comply, they again reopen.
कानपुर में नॉर्मली टैनरीज हैं और टैनरी से क्रोमियम साल्ट सबसे ज़्यादा निकलता है जो गंगा को प्रदूषित कर रहा था। और पिछले दिनों में कानपुर में जो ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट भारत सरकार ने लगाया है, तो सारे टैनरीज का वेस्ट ट्रीटमेंट उन्होंने शुरू कर दिया है और वहाँ से अब गंगा में जो है टैनरीज के केमिकल्स नहीं आ रहे हैं। इन्वायरमेंटल पोल्यूशन कंट्रोल एक्ट के तहत ये जितनी भी इंडस्ट्रीज हैं उन्हें अपने इफ्लुएंट का ट्रीटमेंट स्वयं करना है, और यदि वो फॉलो नहीं करते हैं तो बंद करने के अलावा कोई और विकल्प नहीं है।
The last few months have been an unending nightmare for Kumar. He has even done manual work just to survive. On many days, he and his wife didn't have anything to eat. They just managed to feed their children somehow.
हमारे घर में ऐसे दिन हुए हैं कि हम लोगों ने केवल पानी पी के सोए, खाना नहीं खाया। बच्चों को दम खिलाना, बच्चों को उधार लेके हमने खिलाया है, पड़ोसी से, दुकानदारों से, सबसे उधार लिया पैसे। वो पैसे आज हम भर रहे हैं धीमे धीमे चाहे जैसे, लेकिन हम अपने बच्चों को भूखा नहीं देख सकते।
Though Kumar's tannery was closed down because it was polluting the river, he doesn't believe the pollution issue has been tackled as yet. He believes many tannery owners are hoodwinking the government by merely running the tanneries secretly.
तो नोटिस तो एज ए सो कि आदमी ने देख लिया कि हाँ ये नोटिस आई हुई है, बट वो करते ये हैं कि रात को अपने वर्करों को बुला के चुपचाप तरीके से बनाते हैं और वो जो पानी होता है वो ड्रेन कर देते हैं। तो सरकार का नोटिस देना ना देना वो तो कोई बेनिफिट ही नहीं हुआ, और जो भी अत्याचार जुल्म हो रहे हैं वो वर्कर के ऊपर हो रहा है। पहले वहाँ पर जो 100 आदमी काम करता था वही काम अब रात में 2 आदमी 3 आदमी लगा के कर लेते हैं वो, क्योंकि उस तरीके से प्रोडक्शन नहीं ले रहे हैं, अपना चुपचाप माल बनाते हैं, जो पानी होता है वो ड्रेन कर देते हैं।
According to the Central Pollution Control Board, pollution levels at 80 monitored sites on the river have risen since 2013. The biological oxygen demand, or BOD, was more than 3 milligrams per litre at 36 of the 80 sites, and 2 to 3 milligrams per litre at another 30 sites in 2017. High BOD levels are harmful to the river species as well as people who use the water. Though Amit Kumar believes the tanneries are at fault, the industry denies that it is releasing untreated effluents into the sewer system. The industry spokesman, Asad Iraqi, rejects the charges, saying the industry is meeting all the norms. Asad Iraqi, however, admits that the sewage treatment plants run by the government have not been upgraded, and most of the domestic sewage discharged into the river is untreated.
Most of the tanneries in Unnao and Kanpur leather cluster, they all have their own primary treatment plant, and either they are sending their effluent to for the final discharge to the CTP, which is established in Jajmau, in Banthar and Unnao. There is 3 CTPs established, and some of the tanneries are standalone. They are doing all the treatments in their own premises, and the tanneries who are running, they all are achieving the parameters imposed by the government of India, but the CTPs have been not upgraded. Most of the civil sewage is going untreated into the holy river Ganges.
The Ganga River Basin covers around 860,000 square kilometers as the river flows through 1/4 or 26% of the country's total geographical area. The basin also covers 10 states and accounts for more than half of the country's population. The river forms the heart and soul of one of the oldest living cities, Varanasi. But even there, pollution has threatened the existence of communities that have lived on its banks for centuries. Can the Ganga be cleaned up? And can it flow again in its pristine glory? Varanasi, one of the oldest living cities in the world, and the holiest place for Hindus on the river Ganga. Traditions, rituals and life have flourished in the city of temples for thousands of years. Now the constituency of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the city is a mesh of narrow lanes housing ancient buildings bearing testimony to centuries gone by. Many Hindus consider their lives unfulfilled if they don't seek spiritual purification in the city's river and its countless temples. Families cremate their dead on the riverbank, believing souls go to heaven and escape the cycle of birth and death. It is said there has never been an unlit pyre on the riverbank for thousands of years on any day or night. But the cremation rituals also have the effect of polluting the river. The chairman of Ganga Research Center in Varanasi, Professor B.D. Tripathi, started research on the Ganga water pollution in 1972 under the leadership of India's first female Prime Minister, the late Indira Gandhi. On January 3, 1981, Mrs. Indira Gandhi asked him to do everything that he could to remove the pollution from the river. But after her death in 1984, the responsibility fell on the shoulders of her son, Rajiv Gandhi. Professor Tripathi knew then just how complicated his task was, knowing how sacred the river was to the Hindu community.
इन बर्निंग घाट से करीब 33,000 मुर्दे 16,000 टन लकड़ी की सहायता से जलाए जाते हैं और जलाने के बाद 800 टन राख इन दोनों घाटों से निकलता था और गंगा जी में गिराया जाता था। इसी के साथ साथ हमारी हिंदू मान्यता है कि बॉडी को कंप्लीट जलाया नहीं जाना चाहिए, तो कंप्लीट नहीं जलाना चाहिए। इसमें सम पोर्शन ऑफ द बॉडी, हाफ वन फ्लेश कंटेंट इज डिस्चार्ज टू दी डायरेक्टली थ्रोन टू द रिवर गंगा। तो इन दोनों के समाधान के लिए राजीव गांधी जी ने सीवेज ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट की शुरुआत की और उस समय 2 ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट वाराणसी में लगे। एक भगवानपुर में लगा जो 12 मिलियन लीटर का MLD का है और दूसरा जो है 80 MLD का ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट दीनापुर में लगाया गया था। और उस समय भी हमारी यहाँ की जो क्षमता थी 250 MLD थी, तो 250 MLD सीवेज को ट्रीट करने के लिए सिर्फ हमारे पास 102 MLD के ट्रीटमेंट प्लांट लगे हुए थे, इसलिए प्रॉपर ट्रीटमेंट नहीं हो पा रहा था।
But these efforts failed to bring about the desired outcome.
There is a resource crunch. There were policies which were developed, and there were some efforts done which have not resulted in the impact which was anticipated. However, the program also has gone manifold changes now to address those points of failure or the lapses which were there in the previous efforts which were done by the previous governments.
The city of Varanasi is defined by the river, and no devout Hindu ever begins his journey without paying homage to the Ganga. 54-year-old Professor Vishvambar Nath Misra begins each day by taking a holy dip in the river. He then prays at the temple before proceeding to deliver his lectures at his electronics engineering department at the nation's premier center of learning, BHU Indian Institute of Technology. Professor Mishra is also the Mahan, or the chief priest, of one of the city's holiest shrines, the 500-year-old Sankat Mocha temple. The professor's temple foundation runs a laboratory that tests river water for pollution and fecal coliform bacteria. The professor, like his father before him, has been campaigning for a cleaner Ganga for decades. He rejects the state government's claim that the river water in Varanasi is now fit for drinking.
If the river is fit for bathing, that should be below 500. And if you say that Ganga is Achmani quality, if you talk about that, if she is fit for taking a sip, then the fecal coliform count should be 0, absolutely 0. That is not the case.
He points out that unlike in Kanpur, where tanneries are the main culprits, Varanasi suffers from the release of raw sewage into the river.
We know the quantum of sewage, raw sewage which is flowing into the river, and as on present date 350 million liters per day is being disposed of into the river. So you can think and you can imagine about the situation, what is happening with the river.
सिर्फ वहीं गंगा का प्रदूषण है इस समय जहाँ पर नाले प्रॉपरली टैप नहीं कर पाए। जैसे बनारस में 30-35 नाले थे, अभी 1 या 2 नाले ऐसे हैं जिनसे कि डायरेक्ट सीवेज आज भी गिर रहा है, उसकी टैपिंग नहीं हो पाई है और वो अंडर प्रोसेस है, काम चल रहा है। विद इन फ्यू मंथ्स, 2-3 महीने में हमें लगता है कि वो भी बंद हो जाएगा।
The pollution has made the future uncertain for many dobis or washermen in Varanasi. One dobi ghat or washerman's riverbank steps on the other bank of the river opposite the city doesn't have the usual bustle in the morning. Even though the dobis are still going about their business, they are unsure what the government might do in the future. 74-year-old Barsati Kanoja has been washing clothes in the river for more than 50 years. But today, they have been told that they would have to stop polluting the river. Basati says they would only shift if they are provided with a place to carry on their profession.
जो गंगा के मतलब लोग आते हैं कभी कदार के नाव से, स्टीमर से, तो वो लोग कभी बोलते हैं तो हम लोग कहा जाता है कि भाई हम लोग के आप लोग हमको घाट बनवा के दे दीजिए, इसलिए हम जा कर के मतलब वहाँ धोएं, हमारा पेट कैसे चलेगा, हम लोग कैसे जिएंगे, यही हमारा धंधा है, यही हमारा कारोबार है। भाई जानते हो कहते कि भाई गंगा प्रदूषण मतलब लगा है, मतलब गंगा सफाई का मतलब अभियान चल रहा है, उसके लिए मतलब हम लोग रोक रहे हैं। मगर हम लोग कहा कि भाई हम लोग जाएँ कहाँ, बताइए हमको, जाने के लिए हमको बता दीजिए, रास्ता दीजिए, रास्ते से अपना चले जाएंगे हम लोग।
Basati is aware of the Clean Ganga program that's being promoted by the government, but he isn't convinced about the commitment of the project managers.
देखिए जब उन लोग को प्रशासन हटा दिया तो उन लोग के लिए टंकी बनाया, टंकी में लोग धोते हैं, टंकी का पानी जो बह के गंगा जी में आता है और पानी आज भी बह रहा है और हमेशा बहेगा। अब उसके अभी सरकार कोई पर्यवेक्षण नहीं लगाया कि पानी रोकी। इसके बारे में खाली लोग मतलब लूटना खाना, हाँ लूटना खाना, इससे दिखा रहे हैं कि हम इतना क्या है, आज तक कभी सफाई गंगा का क्या, गंगा चाहे तो अपने से कर सकती हैं। अभी देखिए वो जो था मतलब लॉकडाउन लगा था, पानी स्वच्छ हो गया था, लॉकडाउन में पानी स्वच्छ हो गया था, इसलिए कि कितने फैक्ट्रियाँ कुल बंद हो गई थी, फैक्ट्री का पानी नहीं आ रहा था, गंगा में एकदम मतलब पानी पैसा फेंक दिया जाए उठा लिया जा रहा है, आज फिर वही हालत है।
Like the Kanojia community of Washermen, the Mala fishing community in Varanasi is also facing an uncertain future. Fish production has gone down. In recent years, fishing has been banned in the stretch from Kanpur to Varanasi, given the religious importance of this stretch for Hindu devotees. 35-year-old Rambabu Sahani has known no other life other than fishing. He belongs to the community that has been in the profession for centuries. He goes out before the break of dawn, comes back before noon, and then ventures out again in the afternoon to catch fish. This has been his life for the last 15 odd years.
हम उठते हैं जब 4 बजे भोर में उठते हैं तो जाते हैं मछली मारने, मछली मार के आते हैं 9 बजे 9 बजे आते हैं, मछली उछली अपना बेच उच के घर आते हैं, खाना खाते हैं, फिर 10 बजे फिर मछली मारने चल जाते हैं, मछली मार के फिर आते हैं वही 4 बजे। जब 4 बजे आते हैं तो मछली की दुकान लगाते हैं, हम बेच उच के वहाँ से खाली होते हैं, घर आते हैं तो आधी घंटा 20 मिनट बैठते हैं, खाना पीना खाते हैं, खा के फिर चल जाते हैं गंगा जी आएंगे, रात भर मछली मारेंगे, रात भर मछली मार के फिर सुबह आके हम बेचते हैं।
But in recent years, his life has taken a turn for the worse. Fish catch has gone down, and police harass them all the time.
हमारी कमाई पहले तो कमाते रहे 2000 रुपया, अब तक कमाई हो गई हमारी 200-300 ऐसे कमाते हैं। मछली मारने जाते हैं, मछली मिलता नहीं उधर, अब 80 घाट पे जाते हैं तो पुलिस वाले हमको रोकते हैं, मारते हैं, पुलिस वाले पकड़ लेंगे, 10,000 जुर्माना कर देंगे, नाव भी हमारा खींच ले जाएंगे। तो बोलते हैं हम लोग अपने घाट पर रहते हैं, रामनगर में रहते हैं। अब इतनी महंगाई हो गई है हम लोग कर भी नहीं पाते हैं, तो भी दाल रोटी हम लोग का चल जा रही है, तो 200 कमाते हैं तो बस। फिर उसके बाद मोदी की जब सरकार हो गई हमारी, तब हम लोग सोचे व्यवस्था बढ़िया हो जाएगी हमारी, हम लोग कुछ सुधर जाएंगे। और फिर हम लोग का जब 2000 पर रोज़ कमाते रहे, अब तो हम कमाते हैं 200 रुपया, कमाने में भी हमको पूरी करम हो जाती है। अब 200 रुपया भी नहीं कमा पाते हैं काहे से, न मछली मारने देते हैं कोई, न कुछ करते हैं, तो भी हम लोग लगे रहते हैं। हम जो आप गंगा जी है, गंगा जी बताइए करें, गंगा जी साफ़ करना, गंगा जी कैसे साफ़ होगी? जब मल्लाह रहेंगे तभी ना होगा। हर दुख मुसीबत में पहले मल्लाह होते हैं, मल्लाह आके करते हैं, देखते हैं, कोई भी घटना होती है तो मल्लाह भी आते हैं।
फिशिंग तो लोगों के लाइवलीहुड का एक मेजर सोर्स था, लोगों का, नाविकों का, स्पेशली जो है मछुआरों का। लेकिन जब से गंगा के पानी में लेड, कैडमियम, क्रोमियम, निकेल, ये सारे जहरीले तत्व जो है कानपुर रिफाइनरी जो टैनरीज हैं इन केमिकल इंडस्ट्री से आने लगे थे तो इसका कंटामिनेशन मछलियों के अंदर भी हो गया था। तो जब मछलियों के अंदर हो गया था तो एक तो रोक लगाना बहुत आवश्यक हो गया था कि कंटामिनेटेड फिशेस, क्योंकि ये आँख से नहीं दिखता है, तो ये जांच करने के बाद पता लगेगा कि इसके अंदर लेड कैडमियम है, क्रोमियम है, तो इसलिए भी उस पर बैन लगाना बहुत आवश्यक था और वो लगाया गया था कि फिशिंग नहीं होगी।
The heavy pollution is leading to cause bioaccumulation of any toxicant through fishes. It reaches to the human beings, and there it has been found causing a number of diseases like paralysis, like cancer, like skin diseases and hepatitis, or say dysentery.
Sahani rues the fact that he has seen crystal clear water in the Ganga, but it's no longer the case.
गंगा पहले से बहुत कम हो गई है और गंगा जी का पानी वो पानी रहा तो आदमी जो पैसा फेंकते रहे ना तो लौक जाता रहा, एकदम चिक्कन रहता है। अब तो इतनी गंदा, गंगा जी इतना गंदा हो गई हैं, लोग दिखाई नहीं देते हैं गंगा जी। पानी लोग पहले पी लेते हैं हम लोग, अब तो पानी पीने में भी हम लोग को दिक्कत होती है।
Now, some holy men have put their lives on the line to save the river that they worship. Will a few holy men succeed in doing what successive governments have failed to achieve? The Ganga is in its pristine condition in the icy Himalayas. It flows there in gay abandon as it races down to the plains. But the problems begin to surface as the river goes past the holy towns of Rishikesh and Haridwar. Dams and barrages built to cater to the needs of the densely populated towns hamper its flow. Illegal sand and pebble mining also threatens the ability of the river to rejuvenate itself.
It is the fact that the flow of Ganga finds reduction in the water amount when it passes from the Uttarakhand itself. It is a fact, it is a very cruel fact that the water amount in the river Ganga will go on depleting year after year after year.
Moved by the river's plight, some people have made it their life's mission to save the Ganga. One of them was Dr. G.D. Agrawal, a leading environmental scientist at the nation's premier institute, the Indian Institute of Technology, or IIT. In 2018, Dr. Agrawal, who had become Swami Sanan, began an indefinite hunger strike to check the river's abuse. His main concern was that all the efforts to clean up the river did not show visible signs of improvements in the quality of the river water. The Swami died after 111 days of fasting. But the fire that the Swami lit in the Himalayas is still burning bright. Swami Shivanand Saraswati, who heads the Matri Sadan ashram, where Swami Sanan fasted, begins each day by paying homage to the river. The 72-year-old monk is steadfast in his campaign and is happily willing to give up his life for the cause.
The government can take our lives, but cannot take our deviate us from our spiritual or from our results. Everyone has to die. I will die. People will die of some diseases. I will die of doing tapasya. It is good for us. Sananji had not died. He is immortal. Everyone is remembering him because he has sacrificed his life for the sake of Ganga, which is the lifeline of India.
I totally disagree that anyone should go to the limit that he ends his life and gets nothing in return. I personally do not agree giving human life for any cause, and especially where the administration and the political agenda of the state and the country is involved.
The monks in the Haridwar ashram have all gone on hunger strikes over the last few years. Swami Shivananda has himself staked his life a few times before. In 2019, he fasted for 30 days in August to September, surviving on just a glass of water with 1 teaspoon of honey and a dash of lime for the first few days. The Swami just doesn't think it is a political battle they are waging that deflects them from their spiritual journey.
We have also renounced the word, no doubt. But renouncing word does not mean that we cannot see the plight of the people, of the society, of the environment, and we cannot do anything. Renunciation does not mean that one will become passive. We are not a passive sense.
Giving up life for any cause is anything but passive. And Shivanand is not the only one who has embarked on this perilous journey. After Swami Sanand died, Swami Atama Bodhanan, a former computer science student and young monk, began his hunger strike to carry on the struggle. He fasted for 194 days. He gave up his fast after the government gave a written assurance on their demands to save the river. But the government hasn't kept its word, according to the monk.
In the end, when they saw that things are getting a little bit, hyped by the media and people are coming, so the government finally accepted our demands. In a returnly they accepted, and that letter was given to us by the director of NMCG on 4th May 2019. And after receiving that letter, I broke my fast. If the government is interested in rejuvenation of Gangaji and the saints of Matrisan, we are also interested in the rejuvenation of Gangaji, then why this contradiction is happening between us and the government? Because the government's intention is not Ganga or the revival of Ganga. Their intention is something, there must be something else. That's why this contradiction is happening.
In December 2019, Sadhvi Padmavati, another young monk, began a fast unto death for the same cause. 23-year-old Padmavati, who had graduated with philosophy honors, was forcibly taken to hospital by the police one night after 60 days of fasting. Today, the monk cannot even walk or can hardly speak. But Shivananda says they won't give up their fight until their 4 main demands are met.
First, at least 4 dams which is going on in these Bhagirathi, Alaknanda and Mandakini, that should be closed. At the same time, mining should be stopped in Haridwar, because in Haridwar mining is done by digging the stones, and which cannot be replenished. And thirdly, there should be a Ganga Parishad which will take care of Ganga, and the Ganga Act.
For its part, the government maintains it is on the same page as the monks in the ashram. It says it understands the monks' demands, but it needs some more time to solve the issues since it has to talk to all stakeholders.
We are trying to work out and convince other stakeholders also, and I hope that such kind of eventuality will not arise, because several fasts have happened. We have gone, we have met, we have discussed with them, and they have also been gracious enough to agree with us and then give some more time. It's good that all stakeholders have interest of Ganga in their mind, but there would be some limitations, there would be some time frame in which these things will happen.
I think it is a good thing that the concern has been highlighted at the highest level of decision making, that Prime Minister's office and Prime Minister himself announcing that River Ganga is in a bad shape, and the Prime Minister's office would monitor that the pollution abatement efforts as well as river flow is maintained. And they launched a national program saying that Aviral and Nirmal Ganga, which means they will ensure not only the pollution abatement, also ensure there is an environmental flow in the river. I think it's a good start.
Despite the government's assurances, the monks are not giving up their campaign yet. The government also maintains it is dead serious about cleaning the river, and it is spending billions of dollars to that end. Can it succeed this time around when so many ambitious schemes in the past did not achieve their intended results? Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched his flagship Namami Ganga program right after he assumed office in 2014. The ambitious 200 billion rupee, or more than $3 billion program, aims to set up several sewage treatment plants, or STPs, develop the riverfronts, clean up the river, and restore biodiversity along the way. Although much more work remains to be done, some riverine communities have already begun to reap the benefits of the mega project. "55-year-old Vimal Kumar Pathak is a philosophy graduate in the holy city who wanted to be a film actor in Mumbai. When his dreams were not realized, he returned to Varanasi and became a tour guide on his friend's advice.
चूँकि मैं एक फिलॉसफी का स्टूडेंट था, मैंने पढ़ाई किया था, तो मेरे किसी दोस्त ने मुझे ये सलाह दी कि विमल जी, टूरिज्म आपके लिए एक बेहतर ऑप्शन है, क्योंकि आप अगर एक्टिंग नहीं कर पाए और आप पढ़े लिखे हैं, आप दर्शन शास्त्र के विद्यार्थी हैं, आप चाहें तो अपना ज्ञान टूरिज्म इंडस्ट्री को ज्वाइन करके आप इसको बढ़ा सकते हैं। इस ख्याल से मैं टूरिज्म की तरफ अग्रसर हुआ।
Initially, Pathak had to work hard to establish himself as a tour guide. He studied history, learned foreign languages, sat for an examination and qualified as a government-approved tour guide. But Pathak faced awkward situations because of the dirt and filth in the river and the city when he was showing people around.
कि जब हम किसी भी विदेशी टूरिस्ट को अपने बोट में बैठाते हैं, तो गंगा का डिवाइन कैरेक्टर है, जो देवी का कैरेक्टर है, उसके बारे में बताते हैं। आज से या कह लीजिए 2014 के पहले स्थिति कभी-कभी ऐसी होती थी कि हम लोग को शर्मिंदा होना पड़ता था। जैसे मैं नाव पे टूरिस्ट को लेके जा रहा हूँ और उनको बताते हुए लेके जा रहा हूँ, रास्ते में कुछ दूर गया तो मैंने देखा एक आदमी सुबह-सुबह, क्योंकि यहाँ की जो बोट राइड है वो बहुत सुबह होती है, 4-5 बजे होती है, सुबह-सुबह एक आदमी शौच के लिए बैठा। तो हम हमारा नाव वाला और मैं दोनों साथ में मिलके इस शर्मिंदगी से कैसे बचते थे। हम टूरिस्ट को दूसरी दिशा की तरफ मुंह करके या दूसरी दिशा की ओर चीजें बताने लगती थी।
But in recent years, Pathak has seen a major improvement along the river. The ghats, long covered with piles of trash and human excrement, appear to be clean these days.
आज की स्थिति में ऐसा नहीं है। आज की स्थिति में न यहाँ कोई शौच के लिए बैठता है, बल्कि अगर कोई बैठता है तो पब्लिक इतनी जागृत हो गई है, इतना जागरण आ गया है कि उसको स्वयं डांटता है। तो एक तरह से जो जन जागरण हुआ है, इसमें निश्चित रूप से 2014 और मोदी जी का अमूल्य योगदान है। डोमेस्टिक टूरिज्म भी बढ़ा है, साथ में साथ ओवरसीज टूरिस्ट भी अच्छी संख्या में आने लगे हैं, इसमें कोई शक नहीं है।
The river is beautiful at this time of the year, where migratory birds make the river their temporary home. They spend about 3 to 4 months in the river and then move on to their next destination, thousands of miles away. There are more birds and more tourists with cleaner Ganga, and Pathak's earnings have seen a jump despite the pandemic.
हम लोग की जहां तक बात है, हम लोग की आमदनी में भी पहले से इजाफा हुआ है, इसमें कोई शक नहीं है। हमारी व्यस्तता बढ़ी है। देखिए, जनरली 2014 के पहले वन नाइट टूरिस्ट होता था, लेकिन 2014 के बाद मैंने देखा है, मेरे अपने टूरिस्ट बहुत कहते हैं कि मैं बनारस में कम से कम 2-3 नाइट तो गुजारूंगा ही। जैसे ही सफाई होने लगी और टूरिस्ट और ये सफाई होने नहीं लगी बल्कि दिखने लगी, लोगों को महसूस हो गए, तो मैंने ये भी देखा है कि बहुत से विदेशी जो यहाँ आते हैं, आने के बाद उन्होंने अपने विचार बदले हैं और जो 1 नाइट और 2 नाइट रुकते थे वो यहाँ 4 नाइट रुकना शुरू कर दिए। और कोई टूरिस्ट तो यहाँ मेडिटेशन करने के लिए 15 दिन तक रुकता है। निश्चित रूप से इसमें सफाई का, गंगा के सफाई का, घाटों के सफाई का बहुत बड़ा योगदान है।
The nationwide lockdown to curb the spread of COVID-19 also helped improve the water quality of the river. Many industries were closed, and that helped reduce the level of pollution.
River was clean during the lockdown because there were certain activities and not taking place, and there was less demand of water. So there is a close relationship between the flow of the river and the pollution. So there were more water flowing into the river, and the pollutants got diluted. So if you take a sample from a diluted river, you would always see, or if you have more water flowing into the river, you will always see that the river looks cleaner. The moment the lockdown was lifted and industry started working and cities continued to flow sewage into the river, so you can see the difference now. We are back to square one.
Though Pathak has seen a change in his fortunes, unemployed tannery worker Amit Kumar in Kanpur is still hoping for better days to dawn. Kumar wants the Ganga to be cleaned, but not at the cost of his job.
गंगा दूषित हो रही हैं, जो दूषित हो रही हैं वहाँ पर जो सब्जियाँ वगैरह उगाई जा रही हैं वो भी एक तरीके से पॉइज़न हो गई हैं, वो भी हम लोग जो खा रहे हैं वो भी पॉइज़न है। तो जो भी इसका सिस्टम है, सरकार से यही अनुरोध करेंगे कि जो भी इसका पानी का ड्रेन आउट वगैरह का जो भी सिस्टम है, अगर व्यापार बंद ना करने के अलावा इसका और भी कोई रीज़न हो तो वो करें।
Like Amit Kumar, Barsati Kanajia near Varanasi is also waiting for the government to fulfill its promises. The washermen have been promised separate water tanks where they can carry on their profession without polluting the water. But Barsati claims nothing has been done for them so far.
कम से कम हम लोग के 20 साल से ज़्यादा चिल्लाते हो गया, आज तक सरकार कोई सुनवाई नहीं की, कोई सुनवाई नहीं किया, आज भी नहीं किया। और न कहीं घाट बनवा के मतलब हम लोग को दिया, न कहीं पोखरी मतलब खनवा दिया, न कहीं मतलब देने का मतलब अभी कोई मतलब संभावना दिखा रहा है।
In the remote Himalayan retreat, Swami Shivanand still believes everyone is on the same page as far as the primary mission is concerned. But their paths are different, and he doesn't believe the government is on the right track.
It is not my goal, it is everyone's goal. Even government wanted to purify Ganga. The government's aim is also the same, which we are demanding. Where only the way of thinking is different. Government is also wanting that Ganga should be in her pristine form. Modi is saying himself as the son of Ganga. Ganga has called him. Therefore, aim of everyone is the same. But our ways are different, and in our view, the path they have adopted cannot clean Ganga.
Despite the criticisms and doubts, the government affirms that the Clean Ganga mission is on course. It says it is committed to the river's two major issues: maintaining its uninterrupted flow and cleanliness. In recent months, the plans have taken a hit because of the pandemic, lockdowns, and the deep economic crisis the nation is facing. Still, the government is confident that the Ganga cleanup project will not be allowed to suffer. It says more sewage treatment plants are being set up, and money for the Ganga project hasn't stopped flowing.
COVID-19 has been a big challenge globally, but I am very happy to tell you that not even for a day the STPs which were constructed under Namami Gange stopped working. And then as far as finances are concerned, I can tell you the program is structured in such a way that we have not felt any crunch of money. Nowhere in the field any release has been stopped, and then nowhere due to financial crunch our program has suffered.
India has about 4% of the world's freshwater resources. It also figures among the top 10 water-rich nations in the world. Still, it is water-stressed, according to the country's planning agency, Niti Aayog. India's rivers are paying the price of an ever-growing population, rapid industrialization and urbanization. The Ganga has bore the brunt of the abuse, being the preeminent river system in the country. Prime Minister Modi has made the Ganga cleanup a primary mission of his government. Will he succeed in returning the river back to its pristine glory? Or is the holy river gradually flowing towards its inevitable doom?
Ganga will be clean only partially, and we can never attain, I doubt, we can never attain the chastity and purity of the river Ganga, which we all enjoyed 50 or 60 years back.
हमारा ये साइंटिस्ट मानना है कि यदि गंगा सूख गई तो 45 करोड़ लोगों का जीवन बचाना मुश्किल हो जाएगा। कोई सरकार, कोई व्यक्ति किसी को बचा नहीं सकता है। ऐसी स्थिति में अब हम क्लीन गंगा की बात नहीं करते, हम सेव गंगा की बात कर रहे हैं।
No one person can save Gangas. It has to be a collaborative work, and whatever we have seen, I can tell you, in last 3 years I have seen change. We have seen it is possible, and we have to believe in it, and we is the answer. Only when everyone joins this effort, it will be possible, and it is certainly possible.